Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. We have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Krystal?
Indeed we do. We are going deep on what's going on in MAGA, Trump feuding with MTG and Thomas Massie. We got a late night reversal from him on the Epstein files. Now he's telling Republicans that they should vote for the release. This is a huge deal. So a lot to get into there. Meanwhile, Nick Fuentes is declaring that MAGA is dead. So that is certainly worth discussing and debating whether or not this moment does in fact spell the end of MAGA effectively and how weakened President Trump is in this moment. We've also got Marjorie Taylor Greene telling the truth about Israel on CNN, much to Dana Bash's shock and chagrin. Israel also asking for a 20-year security agreement. Typically those have been 10-year. They're asking for more money as well, seemingly an acknowledgement that they understand the politics of Israel are shifting very quickly here in the U.S. And we got some stuff from the Democratic side of the aisle as well, including new reporting on how Chuck Schumer, politically speaking, is a dead man walking. He probably won't get pushed out of leadership, but very unlikely that he would be able to run and succeed in 2028. So a lot that's going on there as well. Don't want to lose sight of the Dems in all of this.
Yeah, of course. I mean, look, there's civil wars in both parties. That's really, I think, the theme of the show. Everybody, please go ahead and sign up, breakingpoints.com, to become a premium subscriber. You can support all of our work. And if you can't become a premium subscriber right now, no worries. Please hit subscribe to this YouTube video or to anywhere on our YouTube channel if you're watching. And if you're listening to this as a podcast, please just go ahead and send this episode to a friend. We have a huge amount of people who are now coming in terms of new viewers, new listeners, because of a lot of our Epstein coverage, which we've been on for the last 5 years. So first of all, it'd be great to have your support. We never lost sight of the Epstein issue. But second, if you are, if you like our Epstein coverage and somebody in your life is interested, please just send one of our episodes, one of our videos to a friend. It really helps the show grow. Rate us 5 stars on a podcast platform as well. But let's go ahead and start with MTG. As Krystal said, this is definitely the biggest news of the entire weekend. And it just demonstrates a variety of different things. Is that there's a huge split right now in the Republican Party being forced over Israel, over Epstein by association, perhaps because of the association between those two. But MTG has now come under fire despite being one of the most loyal people to Donald Trump in the lead up to the 2024 election, but exposing a rift on what MAGA, America First, and all that means in the first year now of the Trump administration. Let's go ahead and put the truth up there that came on some Friday night. Trump officially unendorsed Marjorie Taylor Greene. Here's what he had to say. I am withdrawing my support and endorsement of Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene over the great state of Georgia over the past few weeks, despite my creating record achievements, blah, blah, blah. What he continues to say is basically that she has lost the plot and that she is focusing on the Democratic Epstein hoax. Marjorie Taylor Greene responds then. Let's go and put her text, please, on the screen. President Trump just attacked me and lied about me. I haven't called him at all. I did send the text messages today. Apparently, this is what sent him over the edge. The Epstein files. Of course, he is coming after me hard to make an example to scare all Republicans before next week's vote to release the Epstein files. It's astonishingly how hard he is fighting to stop the Epstein files from coming out that he actually goes to this level. But really, most Americans wish he would fight this hard to help the forgotten men and women of America who are fed up with foreign wars, foreign causes, are going broke, trying to feed families, are losing hope of their ever achieving the American dream. That's what I voted for. I have supported President Trump with too much of my precious time, too much of my own money, and fought harder for him even when almost all Republicans turned their backs and denounce him. I don't worship or serve Donald Trump. I worship God. Jesus is my savior, and I serve my district GA 14 and the American people. I remain the same today as I've always been. I will continue to pray this administration will be successful because the American people desperately deserve what they voted for. For me, I remain America first and America only. The text messages were especially noteworthy. Let's go to move those guys just to show you the exact text that she sent Donald Trump and which apparently are what sent him over the edge. This one directly to DJT. Check the flight logs of Epstein's plane. Bill Clinton is on there like 26 times, Hillary too. For many of us, releasing the Epstein files has always been for the women who were victims of Jeffrey Epstein, but also because we believe the Democrat bad guys like the Clintons were entangled and involved with him. Epstein was the spider that wove the web of the deep state. Lean into it. A second one that he sent to Natalie. This is one of Trump's chief aides who often drafts a lot of his Truth Socials. She says here, In every single interview I have done, I have defended President Trump. I've said over and over, the women say he did nothing wrong, and their attorney, he says he's the only one who's helped. And the Democrats had 4 years to release the files but did nothing. Stop ignoring the women. Many of them literally voted for President Trump and say so publicly. Them being raped as teenagers is not a hoax. So this is really what sent him over the edge, Krystal, and I think it is exposing the rift entirely in terms of MAGA as a cult of personality and whether that cult of personality could withstand this issue of the Epstein files. Now, originally there was a lot of MAGA pushback. Many of the biggest MAGA voices eventually retrenched. They decided to defend Donald Trump. You had the assassination of Charlie Kirk, which was kind of a coming together moment. But since that assassination, the Israel issue just continues to completely split apart the entire Republican Party. And Epstein has now become, I think, the flashpoint, not only because of his own connections to the Israeli government, but also because of Trump's complete reversal on the issue. Despite, we'll get to this in a little bit, he did eventually come out and say, release the Epstein files. That was a total 180 after basically throwing his entire administration's power at stopping that discharge petition. They just took that beating in the 2025 elections. Trump is at his absolute weakest right now. This is a battle over 2028, but it also exposes to the nth degree just how much of MAGA itself Trump only defines about, his own personal loyalty, like endorsing Lindsey Graham and endorsing Thomas Massie or going after him, going after MTG now in this specific way. And I do think this is the first time I've seen Trump actually weak with a lot of Republicans, and a lot of people are disgusted with his handling of this issue and of his unendorsing of MTG.
Yeah, what I would say is do not underestimate this woman. Don't underestimate her.
I agree.
Because think about the fact that you have never had a Republican who turned on Trump and succeed, that Trump didn't get the better of, that didn't get excised from the party, didn't end up a Jeff Flake or a Liz Cheney or something like that, where they're just completely now anathema to the party, the base hates them, they're traitors, etc. He's trying to do that with Marjorie Taylor Greene, and he is not succeeding. He's trying to do that with Thomas Massie, and he is not succeeding. This tells us a couple of things. Number one, I think both Thomas Massie and Marjorie Taylor Greene chose the most intelligent possible issues to turn on Trump. Okay, Israel and, the anti-Semitism wokeness panic and Epstein. Those are the first issues where we've really seen him vulnerable with the base and with an energized online constituency. So the issues she chose are incredibly, incredibly intelligent. And then she has gotten the better of him in all of these exchanges. Now, I don't know what is in Marjorie Taylor Greene's heart. I don't know what's in Donald Trump's heart. But we should look at all of these people as savvy political actors. And every single play that she has made has been extraordinarily savvy. Her messaging about, how she always grounding it in her Christian faith and how she wants to reach out to the other side and how much she cares about the women here and how she's listening to them. And by the way, the women say you did nothing wrong. So what's the problem here? Why don't you release it? This is the deep state. Didn't you say that's what you're all about? Her messaging at every turn has been extraordinarily clever and extraordinarily effective. So listen, Marjorie Taylor Greene may not come off as like an intellectual. I don't think she is an intellectual, but this is a very, very savvy political player who appears to be really the first Republican we have seen to turn on Trump in any significant way and actually come out on top of that exchange.
Yeah, that's right. The thing is about Marjorie is that I think that what we take away from her is the same thing that Trump used to have as a superpower, which is authenticity. She really hasn't changed all that much. And to the extent that she has changed, which we'll get to in a little bit, she has apologized. I mean, when is the last time that you saw self-criticism at a national stage level for a politician who is in real time assessing both new information and actually grappling, with the stakes of what happened, and instead of blindly just supporting the sitting president? And I think that is something which a lot of people cannot. This is part of the reason why I don't think that many MAGA or MAGA aligned figures are going to have a hard time, explicitly moving past Marjorie Taylor Greene, because everything that comes from her seems authentic on the Epstein issue, from the Israel issue. Glenn Greenwald says something interesting, which is if you look at the founder's conception of a citizen legislator, there is something genuinely refreshing about Marjorie Taylor Greene, where it actually does seem like this is a person who's taking in new information, reassessing, and actually sticking to a set of principles that she tried to from the very beginning. You can, potentially see it as a cynical move, and maybe it is. And maybe it's just authentic and it's strategic, which makes you something called a good politician. But that's really, the way that I'm looking at this right now with Marjorie. We did have we did have Marjorie Taylor Greene now explicitly, embracing the fight with Trump. This is the other thing. It's not just one of those where Republicans in the past who have been attacked by Trump will be like, oh, we have our differences, but of course I still support the president. She's in full-on attack war mode. Let's go to the next one, please, just to give you an example. Marjorie Taylor Greene now blaming Trump for some of the threats that she has received. She says, the hoax pizza deliveries has started now to my house, to my family. We have received a pipe bomb threat on my construction companies. President Trump's unwarranted and vicious attacks against me were a dog whistle to dangerous radicals that lead to serious attacks on me and my family. I've been down this road before. As a matter of fact, I campaigned all over the country, defended Trump. I received dozens of swatting calls on my house, my family members, with these hoax pizza deliveries. Even more severely, I have received some of the most death threats of any member of Congress that led to multiple men being convicted, serving time in prison. All of that came from the left. Now, President Trump has called me a traitor, which is untrue and horrific. Mark Levin has called me a traitor. So have other prominent, likely paid social media activists. This puts blood in the water, creates a feeding frenzy. It could ultimately lead to a harmful or even a deadly outcome. The timing of this just happens to be days before we take the vote on releasing the Epstein files. I love America, the American people, a sworn oath to uphold the Constitution. I am not a traitor. However, when the President of the United States irresponsibly calls a member of Congress of his own party traitor, he is signaling what must be done to a traitor. I fought harder than anyone else to get Trump elected. I support this administration and the promises we made in the campaign. I'm a Republican in good standing. I've paid all my dues. My voting record is one of the most conservative in Congress. I'm proud of that. The toxic and dangerous rhetoric in politics must end. We need healing in this country for all Americans. And I think what strikes me again about that is the confrontational nature that she is taking there to Donald Trump, but she's also very strategically calling out the word traitor. What does the word traitor mean, right? Remember, we talked about this when Hillary, for example, accused Tulsi of being a Russian ass. It's like you can't just say traitor and treason and imply that people are, explicitly against the country itself. They happen to disagree with you on this issue. She also points out people like Mark Levin and others who are supposedly not traitors to Donald Trump because, of course, they support Israel and they support Trump only because he is explicitly pro-Israel. And so she's, again, drawing the contrast between fighting for an issue set, and in here, the Epstein one, where Trump is really on the ropes, and pointing out the inconsistencies in who he goes after and who he doesn't. Trump did respond to her comments. Here's what he had to say late last night.
And her life could be in danger because of the rhetoric?
Her life is in danger? Who's that?
Marjorie Taylor Greene, she says.
Marjorie Taylor Greene. I don't think her life is in danger. Frankly, I don't think anybody cares about her. Okay, what about you?
Nobody cares about her. He's trying to write her off as irrelevant. It's just not. You cannot get your way out of this. And, Marjorie Taylor Greene, again, she's very, very effective more recently in a lot of her interviews fighting against the traitor label. She took to CNN yesterday. Let's take a listen to what she had to say.
I stood with President Trump when virtually no one else did. Campaigned all over the country, spent millions of my own dollars helping him get elected. And I think that's incredibly important. And I do support him and his administration. And I support them in delivering the campaign promises we made to the American people. His remarks, of course, have been hurtful. However, I have something in my heart that I think is incredibly important for our country. And that is to end the toxic fighting in politics. And this has been going on for years, and it has divided our country, split up friends and families, neighbors, and it's not solving our problems. The most hurtful thing he said, which is absolutely untrue, is he called me a traitor, and that is so extremely wrong. And those are the types of words used that can radicalize people against me and put my life in danger.
What do you think happened? What do you think is the reason for this?
Unfortunately, it has all come down to the Epstein files, and that is shocking. And, I stand with these women. I stand with rape victims. I stand with children who are in terrible sex abuse situations. And I stand with survivors of trafficking and those that are trapped in sex trafficking. And I will not apologize for that.
So, I mean, if you look at the framing there, her attack on Trump, she seems somber in there. She's calling for unity. I mean, this seems to me like all of the hallmarks of a 2028 presidential run. And I don't think it's an accident that this comes on the Epstein issue, that this comes after Trump just took a beating in the midterm elections. And more importantly, though, it was a time for choosing for Trump. Trump has chose now to be just ridiculously pro-Israel. He's chosen a lot of the business community. He's ignoring a lot of the economic problems and basically attacking anybody who distracts from the issues or even dissents and says that they're not true MAGA, going after them with the full force of his administration. And he's very unpopular right now. He's in Biden territory. Yeah. So this is part of what explains everything.
Yeah, no, that's right. And here's the thing is, number one, the timing, as you're pointing out. He just took this absolute drubbing coast to coast. Everybody knows it's a sign of major weakness and backlash against his administration. He's a literal lame duck. He's an old man. He's falling asleep in meetings. And he's extraordinarily unpopular. And then you have this real sore spot with the base, where it's the one issue on the Epstein files. It's the one issue where they are extremely dissatisfied with how he's handling it. Then you think about who Marjorie Taylor Greene is. She's not a Liz Cheney neocon type, right? Marjorie Taylor Greene does not exist outside of MAGA, right? She is not a member of Congress if Donald Trump never is on the scene. She comes directly out of this movement as a Facebook posting QAnon mom. That's who she is. So she has credibility there with Trump's base as this isn't some sort of legacy Republican who just saw the writing on the wall about MAGA's ascent and decided to conveniently and cynically bend the knee. No, she springs directly out of MAGA. So she has some purchase and credibility to say, I am actually representing the true principles of MAGA. Now, that has never worked in the past. In the past, Trump has been right that he has always gotten to say, no, I get to say what MAGA actually is. But now you have enough weakness and enough dissatisfaction on these key issues that you start to be able to gain some purchase with that sort of argumentation, especially when you are a person like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who has that kind of credibility. The other thing I notice, you were talking about how she's apologized for some of the toxicity and the toxic politics that she has embraced. I mean, this is someone who has used extraordinarily violent and extremist rhetoric against her political opponents. She's been on board with everything Trump has done, basically, up until this moment and up until this year. And to be clear, I think you should evaluate every politician as a cynical actor.
Sure.
She has her own political goals, and the moves she's making in this moment align with whatever those political goals are. But it's also interesting to me, her approach is really a direct contrast from how Trump conducts himself on the political scene, because his motto is always never back down, never apologize, right? Even right now, where he's doing a total 180 and now saying, yes, go ahead and release the Epstein files. He's pretending like that was his position all along. He'll never admit that he got something wrong. He'll never apologize. And so stylistically, she is striking this incredible contrast, which I also think has a certain appeal to people. Now, I don't want to go too far because, look, I'm not in the Republican base. I don't know ultimately how that will shake out for 2028, whether people will see her as a traitor to the cause, whether she will ultimately end up in a Liz Cheney kind of bucket as a quote unquote traitor. That's certainly what Trump is trying to accomplish. And I am a little skeptical of the fact, the fact I find what she's saying appealing is a bit of a red flag to me. Is this kind of like a Fetterman of the right, where, people who are Democrats are like, look at her on The View, look at CNN, look at how reasonable she's being in contrast to this madman. And that makes their own base, the Republican base, hate her. That is a possibility as well that I want to put out there too. But right now in this moment, I think she's been extremely savvy and picked exactly the right weak point in his defenses to sort of take her stand here. And also Saagar, yes, she's going directly against him, but then again, she's also draping herself in, I support this administration. I spent millions of my dollars to get this man elected. I still want him to succeed. I want him to accomplish the things that he ran on for the American people. So it's also not a total hard break where she's just saying, you know, I'm done with this and now moving to the other side. And I think that also is part of what's savvy about the way she's positioned herself.
I think that's an extremely important point. Let's understand MTG and the Liz Cheney type phenomenon. Now, what would attacking Trump in a quote liberal way look like, right? It would be by attacking him. I can't even really think. Probably on immigration.
Yeah.
Let's say
Cheney. Liz Cheney. It was on January 6th. That's when she turned on him, right? So here you could say, you know, you maybe on CCOT or maybe on like the National Guard deployment and the authoritarianism, right?
But that's
those
not
sorts
it.
of things.
Right. But that's not it. So it's not the liberal framing of the critique. It's actually, what I think it's so effective is it's explicitly about the campaign promises and the spirit of why Trump got elected in the first place and saying, hey, that was a betrayal. Now, the reason I think it may resonate with you or other like commentators is that one of the ways that a lot of the Democrats have recognized to try and gain back ground is they're like, well, one way that we have to win is in a bigger tent is to convince people to vote for us. And one of the ways to do that is to say the other person that you voted for didn't deliver what you promised. Now, but that's an important distinction in terms of what makes somebody a quote turncoat and somebody who is actually authentically within, you know, that ideological sphere and then speaking out against that. The Republican critique of her right now, like the pro-Trump critique, is that she's undermining the administration, not, you know, that she is somebody who has like turned on everything that she used to believe in the past. I don't think that that's the case. Now, in terms of her stylistic apology, I read that very much in the way of actually coming to terms with a couple of things. First and foremost was the Israel criticism, because I think it was a huge eye-opener for her in particular to take in a lot of the information about Israel, to conclude ultimately that we should not militarily support this nation. She even went so far as to call it a genocide. And I think what she understood is that in the past, you know, for a lot of politicians, they just bought the Israel propaganda kind of hook, line, and sinker. And what they watched is that nasty rhetoric be employed against them for simply acknowledging basic truths like, hey, you're slaughtering a lot of women and children. And I do think that in particular, a lot of the nastiness and the rhetoric, when they see how that is weaponized against them for merely just speaking their own mind and for trying to uphold those very principles, that makes them reassess how they themselves have acted in the past and also how you want to try and build some consensus in the future. And so this is one of those where everybody is trying to sketch out bets right now. We were just looking at this morning, Ted Cruz attacking Tucker Carlson. Part of it is because he wants to make a 2028 run. Part of here with MTG is explicitly picking and saying, hey, I feel like a lot of the promises are being betrayed. But, you know, also with MTG, you know, to give her at least some credit, you know, if she is cynical, she often talks about her children, and she talks often about the ability to purchase a home. Her home state of Georgia, by the way, we were just looking at some economic stuff this morning. Georgia is not doing very well in terms of their economy. They just had those Democratic swings against them. Like, if you want to preserve ability to win or winningness of the recent Republican coalition, you have to kind of return to a lot of those roots. She passes a vibe check in terms of her ability to go and to do a lot of what Trump did in the original 2024 campaign. She was just on the Tim Dillon podcast. I thought she handled it incredibly well. She can go on The View. She handled herself, I thought, there quite competently. She can pretty much go anywhere and handle anything. And that is something, again, you know, which I don't think Donald Trump would actually do very well on a podcast right now if he's actually even remotely challenged, let's say on Epstein or any of the promises that he originally made in 2024, because the power is now real. For her, she can actually critique, and that's a very, very powerful. I've talked previously about kind of the rise of Nick Fuentes and others, and one of the things that Emily has said, I'm borrowing this, it's not my take, but I think it's so deeply true, is there is not a lot of space in the MAGA machine, and in particular in Republican media, for people who are not liberals to critique the Trump administration. That doesn't exist. There's no permission structure. It's a lot like Joe Biden saying he's senile back in, 2023. That was like we could not say those things in Democratic-aligned spaces, even though a huge portion of the Democratic base was like, he's too old, he's too old, he's too old, he's too old. Well, there is a lot of American dissatisfaction, including people who voted for Donald Trump, who again are not liberals. These are not bleeding heart liberals, but they are upset. And so to see them validated in this politician, it seems courageous. It's a big bet. Again, will it work out? I mean, who knows, right? It's only November. There's 3 years to go. Still 2 years, basically, till the actual primary really gets started in, is it Iowa still for the Republicans? I forget. I think it's still Iowa and New Hampshire. Like, yeah, look, nobody's going to make any declarations, and she could absolutely crash and burn. That midterm elections will be an interesting test. She's unendorsing. He said in a follow-on truth, he wants somebody to run against her. Let's see how it works out. But he's also, going against Thomas Massie, and it doesn't look like that's really working out that well. For example, his most recent critiques, I think, are probably only going to strengthen Thomas Massie. Let's put that on the screen, for example, what we have here. Trump says, did Thomas Massie, sometimes referred to as Rand Paul Jr., because of the fact that he always votes against the Republican Party, get married already? Question, question, question. Boy, that was quick. No wonder the polls have him at less than 8% chance of winning the election. Not true. Anyway, have a great life, Thomas, and question mark. His wife will soon find out that she's stuck with a loser. So, I mean, I think that was a really... I don't know. I mean, it's one of those where a lot of people just looked at that and are viscerally disgusted. Thomas Massie's wife tragically died, his previous wife tragically died, of a health incident. And he was obviously heartbroken. He recently just got remarried. And he seemed pretty happy. I think that's great. I think most normal people are like, wow, that's fantastic. Congratulations, Thomas. Even in his announcement, he kind of made an ode, to his dead wife and how he misses her all the time. And I think, the visceral nature in which Trump attacked Massie is Massie, you can say whatever you want about him. I've criticized him here before. I don't agree with everything that the guy says, but it's like MTG in, I believe that what he says is what he thinks. And that's right now, the biggest differentiation in all of politics. And for Trump to attack him like that pushed a lot of people the wrong way. Because it's like, really? You're going to attack Thomas Massie, not only politically, but on his personal life? And then you're going to embrace, Lindsey Graham and all of these other people who are explicitly against your so-called campaign promises. And, we could talk personal life there too all day long if we want to. It's like, who is your venom reserved for? And I think that really pushed a lot of people the wrong way, Krystal.
Well, and here's the thing. Let's be honest. If Trump said this about a designated MAGA enemy, right, no one would have a problem. No one on the right would have an issue with it. No, that's true. No one would have an issue with it.
And he's done it many times, right?
Of course. Yeah. I mean, we could go back like the John McCain guy, I prefer my soldiers who don't get captured. I told Ted Cruz's wife was ugly. Like, the fact that people are taking genuine issue with Trump, like crossing a moral line here, that people on the right are taking issue with, that is a sign, number one, that they hold Thomas Massie in, relatively high esteem, and also see him as a principled actor, right? Mm-hmm. And number two, it's a sign of Trump's weakness. Again, the fact that there's anyone out there saying this was too far and this is disgusting and I can't believe it. I mean, how many too far disgusting things Trump says and does like all the freaking time? Right. So then it's like, okay, well, why was this one too far? And, ultimately, again, listen, he's been president twice. He almost won, the second time as well. He's been a very intelligent political actor. So maybe we'll look back after all of this and say, you know what, he was right. Thomas Massie lost in the primary. Trump was able to crush him. Marjorie Taylor Greene has been marched out of the party. She's got enough future. That's all still very possible and on the table. But right now in this moment, I think we're seeing cracks and fissures that we've truly never seen before. And we're seeing a weakness with Trump, with his own base, that we've also really never seen before. I do want to go back to this Marjorie Taylor Greene SOT, because this was the one where I saw the most pushback from the right on things that she's been saying and doing, because she did that big interview with Dana Bash. And Dana asked her, I think quite reasonably, like, okay, well, you're upset about Trump calling you a traitor. I've never seen you upset about his comments going too far before, even though he uses that type of rhetoric all the time. So why is it different now that it's you? And leads to a pretty, an extraordinary admission for a politician of like, look, I'm sorry. You're right. It's a reasonable criticism and I'm sorry. Let's take a listen to A4.
You posted on X that President Trump is, with his comments, fueling a, quote, hotbed of threats against you. Obviously, any threats to your safety are completely unacceptable. But we have seen these kinds of attacks or criticism from the president at other people. It's not new. And with respect, I haven't heard you speak out about it until it was directed at you.
Dana, I think that's fair criticism. And I would like to say humbly, I'm sorry for taking part in the toxic politics. It's very bad for our country. And it's been something I've thought about a lot, especially since Charlie Kirk was assassinated, is that I'm only responsible for myself and my own words and actions. And I am committed, and I've been working on this a lot lately, to put down the knives in politics. I really just want to see people be kind to one another. And we need to figure out a new path forward that is focused on the American people, because as Americans, no matter what side of the aisle we're on, we have far more in common than we have differences. Yeah. And we need to be able to respect each other with our disagreements.
Wow.
And Saagar, yeah. I wonder what you make of that, because the whole ethos of MAGA is own the libs. Like, it's never been like some principled intellectual, oh, we have these positions and we stick to them. Listen, there's some imaginary version of that some think tankers have tried to put into place. But the reality is the core binding principle is own the libs. Give no quarter to your enemies. Give no quarter to anyone who is to the left of you whatsoever. And so this was the thing that I saw. You can tell me if you think differently, but that she got the most pushback from conservatives of basically like, how dare you go on CNN in the Lion's Den and you apologize to them, and right on the heels of Charlie Kirk's assassination, and you want to go and she didn't apologize to you. There's no accountability here whatsoever. How dare you go in and say that you're sorry for participating in toxic politics. So I think this is in some ways the riskiest approach, that you're going on The View and being very conciliatory, going on CNN with Dana Bash and being very conciliatory here. I wonder what you make of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating to me, because the reason, let's explain too. The real reason is because the post-Charlie Kirk unity thing was, we all disagree, but what we're going to do is we're going to unite, and we're going to get the Trump administration to like declare war on Antifa or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. Use NSPM 7. We talked about all of that. Well, she kind of had the similar take that I did. I was like, man, like, we have a sick culture. We have a sick society. It's actually really shocking to see somebody just assassinated in cold blood over their political views. And if we're all going to have to live together, then there's just a simple way to get past that. Trump's initial response, I was like, oh my God, it's the worst possible type of thing, pouring gasoline on the fire. That's what he does. He's often done it to his own political benefit. But I do think, again, I really believe that this is her genuine belief, because she mentions the Charlie Kirk assassination. And she also, look, as you said about owning the libs, at a certain point though, at what point does it just become the central driving thing if you care about anything? If you really do care about anything, you can hate liberals. I certainly have my moments. But at a certain point, if you have children, if you care about housing, if you care about economy, if you care about jobs, if you care about people's ability to simply exist in the world, at what point does that just actually directly obscure all of the things that the administration has done, is doing, or is not addressing in those core issues? That's really where I thought, the big jump point for 2025 is a lot of people really did vote, I think, not only in terms of opposition to Donald Trump, but a lot of people didn't come out to vote, the so-called swing coalitions and others who were largely supportive of Trump in 2024, because actually thought he was going to help their life. And I do think that we're entering perhaps an age where the material outlook of your life, especially if you're my age, if you're 33 years old, I don't think it's good. I think it's bad. I think that if you're Gen Z, if you're younger in particular, do any of us truly have a hope of doing better in life than our parents did? That is the actual American dream. People talk about it a lot, and many people have been willing to go past that in order to vote for something cultural. 2022 is an example. Even Trump, I think in a lot of ways, 2024. She's making a bet that those things are becoming so bad, so ever-present, that she actually wants to try and to focus on that. And so I do think, there's a commendation. Part of the reason why I think a lot of the Republicans are speaking out against is ultimately that is what unites, much of MAGA is, look, there's a reason they don't talk a lot about the inconsistencies within MAGA. There's a reason they don't acknowledge the Epstein files mentioning Trump. There's a reason they don't talk about the corruption, let's say, of the Trump administration, or any of the many faults, from personnel, the inconsistencies crisis in Venezuela, a lot of the stupid and insane stuff that they have done currently is because it's about uniting in opposition to a different political agenda. And I think that if you start to look at things in more material views, and also with a lot of the other country, it does kind of lead you back to where Marjorie Taylor Greene is right now. And I do think, considering how that view of power has been now exercised by the Trump administration, and a lot of people reject it, it's also not all that politically popular right now. People don't really care about owning anyone if your life is not getting better. They just don't.
I have a burgeoning theory, a little kernel of a theory that I'll put out there, and people can tell me what you think about this. Because honestly, I don't know enough about Facebook world to really say for sure. But when we think of someone being very online, we think of them largely being like super on Twitter, right? Super on Twitter and these like weird podcast realms or whatever. Like JD Vance is that version of very, very online. And we've been talking here about increasingly since Elon purchased Twitter, it has sort of damned the Republicans in a sense because they believe that all their like sadistic, fascist porn nonsense is way more popular than it actually is. And so they've been totally out over their skis, the DHS just like Nazi posting on Maine, all this kind of crap, right? Marjorie Taylor Greene is also very online, but she comes out of like the Facebook boomer mom world, which is more connected to those like material concerns, inflation and, oh my God, here's the prices at the grocery store. And also is going to maybe have more of that sense of, just sort of disgust at the political system and the nastiness and the viciousness. So it's, again, I'm flirting with this theory. I'm not asserting it for sure, but her different orientation here and the fact that she's been able to pick up on some vibrations within the Republican base that other politicians did not pick up on and be a little bit ahead of the curve, maybe because she is in touch with a different constituency than most Republican politicians have been and that, the J.D. Vances of the world are. So that could be part of why she's positioning herself in a different way because the media and the content she's consuming and the people that she is sort of centering her views on and, using as her own barometer for where the base is are a different group than the kind of like elite influencers and podcasters that many Republican politicians are much more attuned to.
Maybe could be online. Could just be being a little bit more in touch. Just go talk to people. Go ask them what's bugging you. I talk to a lot of newer parents. That's who I've mostly been hanging out with. What are people complaining about? Daycare prices, right? They're talking about inflation. They're talking about the difficulty of juggling things, buying a new house, interest rates. That dominates 95% of the discussion. It's not even really political, but you and I both know that is political. Whereas, if you're online or if you're very on Twitter, then a lot of it is like, oh, someone said this, how nasty of the left, or why we have to crush them. I've always said, I think the Twitter thing has been a huge problem I think a lot of them are huffing their own bullshit. They're basically the mirror image of the Biden administration. They're posting charts about how well the economy is doing when every piece of consumer sentiment data says that it's going the opposite direction. All you have to do, if you are just as consistent as you were under the Biden administration at looking at fundamentals for why people angry, discontent, upset, which leads to the Trump popular vote in 2024, then all you have to do is stay consistent to that to see the same playbook run under Trump. In fact, a sign that you're a hack is if you're doing the opposite of what you said back in 2024. So, maybe she's just staying consistent with that. I have no idea what it is, but it is noteworthy. And of course, what's most noteworthy is this is on the issue of Epstein. Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.